today we have Naomi Trentham with us, who is the co-founder of Mitos, which is a group looking at emotional coaching in that area, dealing with anything from children to adults as individuals to the corporate sector to organization. So Naomi, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Can we just talk us through what you do and how you got into the work that you're in?
Sure. So Mitos was founded, the brand, as a brand, we were founded in January 2020. And really it was about, I was working quite a lot in schools doing emotional resilience work with children who weren't able to engage in the classroom because of various reasons, usually some sort of trauma or pain. So I would come alongside and help them understand really what was going on within them emotionally. Having done some training with Emotion Coaching UK over a number of years. And I very quickly spotted when the pandemic hit that this was needed on a much broader scale in other settings, and that it was actually possible to begin to move some things online. And it was around about that time that I met Marie, who is my she's my partner, my business partner, and co-founder of Mitos Global, which is our company. So we do coaching with adults and teenagers and children one-to-one. We also do work on emotional resilience programs and courses for organizations. So that can be sporting bodies. We also deliver training to teaching whole groups of teaching professionals in schools. And we're also involved in developing and supporting mentoring programs. Wow, so we work across the board. The sort of underpinning principles of Mitos, which is all around emotion coaching and emotional engagement, it's applicable in every setting. So we take it just about anywhere where we're invited.
Okay. So what to you is the piece that draws you to this sort of work?
So for me, my first experience of emotion coaching and emotional resilience concepts came after I had my third child. So I nannied for lots of children. I've worked with the Youth Justice Board. I've been involved with looked after children. And so when I came to have my own children, I thought I have every tool that was possibly available. And my first child and my second child were really easy. And then I had my third, and she broke me before the age of 2. I didn't know what to do with her. She was a very unusual child in the way that she approached things, and none of the usual tools worked. And then a colleague, at the time I was volunteering as a trustee for the Sure Start, who run children's centres, and a colleague there invited me. She said, "Oh, we're doing this workshop," and invited to this workshop called Emotion Coaching to Better Understand Your Child. And that 4 hours changed my whole life.
Wow.
Not only did it give me an understanding of of how to co-regulate with my child and how to use language and emotional words to help her calm down and problem solve, it actually brought a greater understanding of my own emotional processing. And it's all rooted in neuroscience, which I love because it makes it, we know it's solid, it's on a solid foundation and well researched. So I began to do it in my own home with my own family, coming up for 8 years ago, and then began to bring it into workplace settings. And that's sort of how I ended up going into schools firstly through my daughter's school, and then was invited into some other schools who were part of the same academy trust. So that's how I kind of got into it. So what I'm drawn by is how incredibly powerful emotions are as a data source.
Right.
So, we often think of them as, you'd have heard the quote, emotions are data, not directives. We often feel, and even this week, I felt myself being drawn in and led by my emotions rather than stopping to recognize what is it I need? What are my emotions telling me? So using them as a data source empowers people to problem solve and actually rise up out of challenging situations, whether that's in a moment or a longer term problem, to find the answers and to understand themselves better. And with that, confidence grows, self-awareness grows, you become better connected to yourself and others. So
yeah,
that's what I love.
That's amazing that the way it sort of developed organically for you. So in a sense, you used your home situation as that lab to start off with, and then moved out from that place.
Yeah.
And it's great that you see the benefit, and I think that's so important that you get a personal benefit, which you then start to have greater and greater belief in, that you're now becoming more and more wanting to share it with others.
Yes, it's exactly that. And I think my family unit is testimony to the fact that this stuff works. And that brings a lot of credibility when we bring it to other people, which is what's so powerful about it. So yeah, it's just brilliant. It's brilliant. And I know it works, it felt, when I sort of started to think about how to get this out there, it felt too important to keep it to myself.
Yeah.
Because it has such a positive impact on us individually and within the family as well as a unit. So
yeah. So just to come back to that statement, which I think is a massive statement in itself. Emotions are data, not directives. So that seems to imply that if for me, my emotions are directive, I am just following them without a sense of awareness. So it's just like, oh, I'm mad or I'm sad or I'm whatever it is, and I'm just running with it.
Yeah.
But running behind it, almost a sense of, I am on this horse that's going somewhere, and all you have to do is hold on. Yeah. And your statement is saying, well, no, it is not a horse that you jumped on and it's going and you have no control over it. Mm-hmm. You actually have some sort of influence in that.
Absolutely. And it's actually recognizing, I mean, one of the things we say when we're doing training is there's no such thing as negative emotion. There's challenging emotion. But actually, if you can take, if you're feeling really angry, it's because you're missing peace. So then you can stop and say, well, why am I missing peace? Where's my peace gone? What do I need to get it back? How can I take this moment, pause, identify what I need, and use that to problem solve the cause of the anger, or to come to peace over the fact you can't problem solve it. It depends what the cause of the anger is, of course.
Yeah.
The same with sadness. If you're feeling sad, you need comfort. So what's the missing comfort? And I had an interesting experience this week where there was a very dear friend of mine who I haven't been in contact with for quite a while. I began to really miss him. And I was like, why am I missing him so much? Like, I know where he's at. I know what's going on. I know he's really busy and he's asked for some space. He's like a brother to me. Why am I missing him so much? What is going on in my life right now that would be different if he was involved? What would he be bringing? And it's comfort. He was somebody that would cheer me on. He's somebody he would say, you're doing a great job. I know this is hard. I'm with you. And he's not around. And which is absolutely fine, because, I've got other friends and other support. But actually what it helped me identify was that I'm actually missing comfort in this particular challenge that I'm facing.
Yeah.
So that enabled me to step back and go, well, where else can I reach out to have my needs met?
Right. That's really interesting. So you've broadened it out from the situation, or in this case, the person who's in front of you, and saying, well, where does this fit into my bigger space, my bigger environment, rather than run down the line of, I guess some people may say, oh, maybe I don't know this person.
Well,
you might say, oh, I'm falling in love with this person, or whatever it is. So, I don't want to.
It's exactly that. So before, I think I would have started to ruminate. Why does he need space from me? Why doesn't he want to be involved in what we're doing at the moment? He's actually a former colleague, or why? Maybe I should just message him. Maybe I should just reach out. Maybe it's, so all of those actions I would have taken before, I would have attached to him as a person rather than what he brought. Right.
So that's really interesting. That sense of self-awareness, that the training that you've gone through and you're delivering is actually you're seeing it in your own life, and I think that's important.
Yes.
Because there's a sense of authenticity with what you're saying.
Yeah, and authenticity is one of the core values of what we do. It has to be real and applicable and honest, because actually we can't we can't use emotions as data if we're not honest about what we're really feeling.
Right. So I guess in that sense, so what I've heard people say is right. Well, it's like befriending whatever the emotion is, as
Yes.
opposed to I can't feel that or I have to push it away straight away.
Yeah.
It's like I'm holding it to
Mm-hmm.
look at it almost and saying, well, that's interesting that this is happening. And so there's a distancing that comes between you and the actual emotion that you're feeling.
Yeah.
So just to come back a little bit, if I came to you and said, da, 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 I'm really angry, da, 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 wouldn't it be true to say that the speed at which your emotions arise is greater than your ability to process?
Yes.
And so how do you help people in that respect get to that? Because I think, wow, that Naomi is like way up here, and I can't get to that point. I'm just down at the bottom, Naomi.
So if I encounter somebody that is raging,
Yeah.
the first thing I do is say, I can see you're really angry.
Okay.
Because what's been proven, Daniel Segal has done a lot of work in this, so it's got John Gottman and lots of other people that are far more qualified than me, but they have discovered that by naming the emotion, it actually enables a connection to happen in the brain between the emotional core of the brain and the logical part of the brain, so connected by the prefrontal cortex. It enables that connection to come into place, which slows down the sort of, I guess, the building up of the emotion. So that was the first thing that I learned when I first went to that training, was naming what's happening, saying what you see. You say what you see, it actually de-escalates the situation. And it's fascinating to watch it in action, actually. So that first day that I did that 4-hour workshop, she talked about an 18-month-old who's learning to walk, running. They start running and they fall and they cry. And as an adult, we assume they're hurt. But actually, that 18-month-old was running and now it's stopped. So it's actually the shock of the running stopping, more likely than not. And so she talked about just saying what happened. You were running and that was fun and you fell and the running stopped. That's so sad. Okay. And how that will bring all the right connections in the brain. And that evening, my daughter was climbing the bunk bed ladder, excuse me, and she fell and she started to cry. So I scooped her up and I said, you were climbing the ladder. That was really fun. And you fell. That's so sad. She stopped crying. Wow. Straight away. Whereas before, as my logical brain is saying she must be hurt, I would have been looking for injury and she would have escalated to an hour-long meltdown, which is what she was having all the time. Right. And so by saying what I was seeing, it stopped it. It was phenomenal. And I was getting this. So she was having regular tantrums that were an hour long, but the same thing applies to adults. So I had a situation where I was coaching a married couple, and there was a situation that had been disclosed to me by the wife that the husband didn't know I knew. I didn't know that he didn't know I knew. Okay. I mentioned it and he flipped. I mean, absolutely flipped. And so I calmly said to the wife, please, can you leave the room? And I mean, he was raging. And I just said, I can see that what I have said has caused you to feel really angry. And he sort of paused. And I said, I'm really sorry. That must have been shocking for you. And he calmed down. Only for about 15 seconds. But he calmed down long enough for me to be able to explain that I didn't know that he didn't know I knew. Yeah. And so, and even it was about a 4 or 5 minute situation that would go, he would begin to rage. I would name and validate what he was seeing. He would calm down enough for me to bring a bit more explanation until he was able to say, I'm feeling really angry. I need to leave now so I can calm down. I said, absolutely, I completely understand. And he left. So, and the situation was resolved eventually through, various correspondence and emails with the school I was supporting him through. But But it was just really interesting to see that exactly the same situation where he begins to rage, just like my toddler. And I was able, just saying what I see would bring down that fight, flight, freeze response. So what I learned to do is to do the same in myself. Right. So road rage is a problem for me. I begin to get agitated by what I consider to be incompetent drivers, which is very judgmental, and that's my problem. And so I begin to feel, and I'll say, I'm feeling really stressed and angry right now because I didn't allow enough time for me to leave. I didn't leave enough time for me to make this journey.
Yes.
I'm feeling stressed, and just by naming that would calm me down enough to get some perspective and say, at worst, I'm going to be 2 minutes late. It's not the end of the world.
So both in your personal and speaking to this client, it's like you've applied. I've kind of visualized it like tapping the brakes.
Yeah.
So the car's running down the hill. If you slam on the brakes, you'll cause an accident. Mm-hmm. You just tap on it and let go, tap on it and let go. You're giving enough space for the amygdala to calm down and the prefrontal cortex to kick in, so that some kind of semblance of logic and control can come back in.
Exactly. And then you can move to problem solving. And the beautiful thing about it, as you'll know, is the more you do something, the more secure those neurological connections become. And so the automated response of naming your emotion becomes easier. It becomes more automated rather than something you have to work really hard on. So one of the things we talk a lot with clients is actually naming your emotions in times where you're not in a heightened state.
Right.
So, brushing your teeth in the morning, what's happening today? How do I feel about each of those things? And naming them out loud is firing off those neurological connections till they become like motorways.
Sorry. And do you come into situations where somebody is unable to name the emotion because either for whatever reason they don't have the language that says, I feel X?
All the time. All the time. So we have loads of resources. We have an emotion wheel, which is fairly comprehensive, but still not fully there. Yeah. Has the 6 core emotions, primary emotions on there, and then it works its way out. And some things are in one, but could be in several. And so we often start with that. And with children, we have emojis and something called jelly beans, where the jelly beans have different facial expressions. And my daughter's got that in her room. And so which jelly bean are you today? And how and we talk about how you can be lots at once. You can be in a state of contentment and happiness whilst facing some painful, challenging situations. Yep. So we often begin with that. So we always talk through the basic neuroscience and explain how it works so that people recognize the value of actually taking a moment. And so what's fascinating is even with children who haven't learned to speak yet, is even naming the emotion will calm them down. And whether it's to do with tone or or just, the vibrations they're picking up from the parent or whoever it is, I don't know, but it's incredible to see how even that can happen. And so when we're working with clients who have gone through particular difficulty and they're struggling to name their experiences, we will do that for them. So we use, I imagine you felt abandoned, or I imagine you felt confused. Confusion is a really common one that takes some time to unpick. Or I imagine you felt sad, or, whatever it is. And sometimes I go, no, it wasn't that. It was this. Okay. Or they'll say, yes, that's exactly right. So so doing it for them. And that's what co-regulating is. So we'll almost co-regulate with a client until they're able to self-regulate.
So co-regulating is coming alongside or working in parallel, where the other person is not able to, for whatever reason, get in touch with the feeling. And you're supplying possibilities that they can latch onto.
Yeah, so we're essentially bringing them the language.
Right.
And enabling them to develop that.
Yeah. That aligns with the developmental psychology that I've been looking at, which is that we have mirror neurons in our brain. And for children who either have had problems of caregivers in their early life, they're unable to formulate the language because they've never seen it.
Right.
So sometimes I think, well, yeah, by you naming whatever the emotion is, my guess would be somewhere in your countenance is that emotion that somebody can say, yes, happiness looks like what I'm seeing here, or anger looks like, and you automatically kind of do it, that so they can mirror it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we talk a lot about children learn by mirroring. So my children, my oldest is 15. She, you know, and obviously it's been a very, very strained couple of years for everybody around the world, but for teenagers especially. And she has been able to come to me and say, I'm feeling really stressed about this. I'm feeling concerned about this. You know, she's been able to communicate and self-regulate and co-regulate with me to a phenomenal level. It's been quite stunning to see. And similarly with my son, you know, he was year 6. He would have been doing all his end of year stuff when COVID hit. And when we first started homeschooling, he was just angry all the time. So I'd say, hey, you know, Judy, you seem really angry right now. What's going on? I don't know. I just feel mad. And then he's able to talk about, we sort of broke it down and actually it was all about disappointment, so much disappointment. So, you know, it's just finding different ways, and they've watched me self-regulate and learn it. Yeah. And I've co-regulated with them. And so I have 3 very, very well-regulated children who can manage themselves in amazing situations, even if they're struggling. So, which is amazing. But what's so powerful about emotion coaching is even a small amount can make a difference. There's one child I started working with he was year 3. And if I said the word feeling, he would rage and bolt. So even saying the word emotional feeling or anything like it, he would get really, really mad. And so I just started really gently doing some play things with him. And he eventually began to trust me. And I was only doing half an hour a week. Right. And then there was one incident, January last year, where something happened, which meant he flipped his lid and made some really poor choices. And I happened to be in the school that day. I was only doing half a day a week. And they came and got me, and I sat and I co-regulated and problem solved him through it. And from then on, he didn't ever need time out of the classroom. It was like something clicked for him. And because it was me who he trusted, who I've been mirroring it for him, suddenly he's now able to self-regulate.
Yeah.
And the school cannot believe the difference in this child. So it works, even just in short bursts.
And do you think that, I don't want to let me be careful in this. Don't want to make yourself redundant, because I guess there's only so many of you or the people who've got these sort of skills. Are these skills teachable? Do you teach others to do this so that you can sort of spread it further?
Yes, we do. So I've done all my training and accreditation with Emotion Coaching UK.
Right.
And everybody that has done training with them is already doing this stuff. There's whole schools that are emotion coach trained. We take it a little bit deeper in what we do with Mitos. So emotion coaching is about managing the emotional experience in the moment. We go a bit deeper. So with our clients, particularly the one-to-one adult clients, we look at behaviours that they're struggling with or situations they're struggling with. And we go back to childhood. Where was the unmet need in the first place? So my firm belief is that the vast majority of mental health conditions are a result of a cumulative effect of unmet emotional need.
Yeah.
Or lack of emotional language. So we essentially build resilience. We go back. I had one client who was absolutely terrified of dogs. We went back into the moment of when she was first encountered a dog that scared her and what emotional need wasn't met. And then I spoke to her as though I was in that memory with her, literally went through, I'd imagine that was really frightening for you. I'd imagine you felt this and this and this. And it brought down the prefrontal cortex in the memory. And then the following week when I met with her, I said, how are you doing? She said, I hugged a dog yesterday.
Wow.
She's 37.
Yes.
And the memory was from 4. So where a client can say, well, I know that fear comes from there, we can go there and address what was needed in order to overcome it here. Now, that's a very simplified example. It's not always that easy, but just helping people understand that some of the behavior, because most people are very hard on themselves. You know, I can't do this and I can't do that, and I can't seem to recover from this, and I keep going back to this habit. And so we look at what caused those things to form in the first place. And it's not therapy. Most of these people have done therapy, they've done counseling, they understand themselves. We just bring the tools to actually overcome the problems in the first place.
But you also bring a safety aspect to it.
Yeah.
And security in order to hold that space where somebody is exploring whatever X, Y, and Z is. And I think that's a big piece of it, isn't it?
I think, and it's an important piece. So, you know, one of the sort of jokes we've made when we've talked about upscaling the business is we can't clone ourselves.
Yeah.
So the people that we're looking at working with to train up to, you know, we're actually really excited about the bigger projects and the organizational things, because it has a bigger impact. And, you know, that what we're doing with the one-to-one coaching is like pulling people out of the river.
Yep.
The bigger organizational stuff is stopping them falling in. So it's a two-pronged approach. So we are working with people who we know get it and understand the values of what we're doing, who we know are doing the work on themselves. So we've got one person that's working for us now, who's going to start taking on our caseload in the school, who I did a long stint of coaching her, and I saw her take these tools and begin to use them on herself. And I've watched her do it with her children. So she gets it. So I know that she can go into a space with a child that's not engaged in a classroom and give them what they need in that 30 minutes. So yes, so it's, and we train whole staff, you know, we train people to help people de-escalate. But we're looking now at sort of projects to bring about sustainability in organizations for it to become cultural.
Wow. That's it's a massive compared to the one-to-one.
Yes, it's huge.
You're trying to shift culture.
Yes, and the one organisation, so there's an organisation, Swim Ireland, who are the governing body for aquatics in the whole of Ireland. They asked us to create an emotional resilience and leadership programme for their elite athletes, which we started to be delivered in the early part of this year. And they're like, this is what was missing. We needed this. So then we've done some work with their club children's officers and safeguarding leads. We've done some work with their coaches. Now we're about to do a webinar series for any adult that's involved in Swim Ireland, whether it's a parent, a coach, a teacher. And then we're going to be moving on to training up a small group of tutors who will continue all the training and all the stuff that we've created for them. Will continue to roll it out so it becomes cultural across the organisation. They're looking at creating 10 safe spaces or 12 safe spaces that are the equivalent of us in the organisation.
Right.
They've said, we want this to be in our culture, which is incredible. Be an incredible privilege for us to be working with them. But they've caught it and have gone, yeah, this is what we need individually and collectively. Yeah.
So we were saying earlier about, or you were saying earlier about the idea of not spreading yourself too thin as an individual and leaving your space for personal life and family life. So do you think that your work has any sort of societal impact on a broader scale at this point in time?
I hope so.
And how do you see that working out, or what sort of vision do you have for that?
So our vision is broad.
Yeah.
And what's the word? We're not looking to go small. We kind of have a go big or go home approach, because we see every single day in our personal life and in our working life, the positive impact of what we're doing. So the testimonials we get from one-to-one clients are phenomenal. The feedback we have from the training we deliver is incredible. Because what we can, so I've got one teacher who I did some training with, who immediately began to implement emotional engagement and emotional conversation and language into circle time in the classroom.
Yeah.
And he has said, the kids are calmer. They're more engaged. When I speak, they stop and they listen. And that's because they know you're invested in them, because you're talking about your feelings. So, that's a class of 30 children. But, if you take that across a whole school, and there are whole schools that adopt this approach, it has a huge impact. I see, the way I communicate with my 15-year-old and then the way she communicates with her friends, they are being impacted because they're finding they're being validated. And that's what it comes down to. Every human on the planet needs to feel seen, and they need to feel safe in being seen. So not seen and vulnerable and torn apart, but seen and validated. And so the tools we bring are very, very simple, but so scalable. You can talk. So when we came, started to come back into classroom environments after COVID, I had teachers saying, how do we talk to the children about this? We're not allowed to touch them. And so I'd say, well, say that. Say, isn't this weird? I found it really hard. I found it really confusing that, and when I see you're sad and I want to hug you and I can't, that's really hard. Well, what can we do? So it was a whole class of reception children that I did a half an hour with. And we talked about this and we're like, what do you find hard? Where do you feel your feelings in your body? The fact that we need hugs work because they send a signal straight up to the amygdala that you're safe. So we can hug ourselves, and that actually does weirdly make us feel safer. So this small kind of what feels like a really small amount of information can completely transform an entire situation or entire culture just by taking on that one little bit of thing of, I'm going to validate what you're feeling. I'm going to recognize the value in what I'm feeling, and we're going to say it out loud. Just that can change everything. And so we are passionate about seeing this kind of knowledge spread far and wide. And the reason we are absolutely determined to bring tools is because knowledge is pointless if you don't know how to use it.
Yeah.
So we've got, we're having conversations with people that are connected with the police who are doing some consulting work, who want to find a way to bring this in. We've got somebody involved with Young Offenders Institutes. We've recently had a call with somebody involved with the military, somebody who's involved with finding jobs for displaced refugees. So we're like, this stuff is essential in every single setting. It's essential in churches, in youth organizations, in corporate. There isn't anywhere that it isn't important, because everywhere you go, there are humans, and it's a human need. Yes.
Yeah. I guess that for me brings up kind of like being oil in the engine rather than, so the oil goes everywhere. And
yes.
It underpins a lot of the stuff. And so you're bringing that awareness back in, that knowledge back in, that validation, that security, all of this is part of your work.
Yes.
And it's amazing when it does that. Do you have any tips for people who are particularly stressed at the moment? So any general sort of things that one could take on board and sort of self-regulate for yourself?
Stress is an interesting one, actually, because something I've been pondering quite a lot, because I've been in a time of quite immense stress, and I don't notice when I'm stressed until my body starts to kick off.
Okay.
So often that means I feel it a lot in my tummy and has issues, dietary issues. Or, as I said to you before the call, I've had this really rotten cold, which is why my voice is a bit off. And I know it's stress related. I know I haven't. And have I not been taking care of myself? I haven't been intentionally neglecting myself, but I haven't taken probably the care that I need. And I think stress is, there's two types of stress. There's stress that we can control and there's stress that we can't. And so I think that's one of the most important things. We can pause and say, what is going on in my world right now that I can control? What can't I control? And then where we can control is where we need to step in and start making some empowered choices. Because actually, I think a lot of stress is caused by a lack of autonomy.
Yep.
So when we feel like we're under pressure, we've got to get this done. And if we don't, the world is going to end, or this is happening, or this is happening. And it spirals. And that's where, we can begin to go down, we begin to go into spaces that aren't even true a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. And so, I think it's interesting because a friend of mine yesterday said, "Oh, Naomi, I really think you should just sign up to a health club. So you could just go and sit in a hot tub for an hour a week just to give yourself that headspace." And I was in a bad mood and I retaliated saying, "Well, it's not going to make my problems go away." But she's right, actually. Connecting with nature is incredibly empowering for helping with stress. And so I don't really like saying, "Well, just get out for a walk because it will make everything better." It doesn't make it better. It just makes it a bit easier and it gives you the headspace. Leave your phone at home. That's a really important part of that. I had a really interesting experience last summer. I left my phone at home and I went for a walk, thankfully, right on the edge of the countryside. And I was out for a walk and I suddenly felt, I really need a hug. Why do I want a hug so badly? Yes, it's COVID and I haven't hugged people as much, but this was like a need, when you desperately crave chocolate or something.
Yeah.
And I stopped and I was like, where is that coming from? And I backtracked. And actually, it was a little pocket of grief over a situation that I hadn't acknowledged was there. And I just said it out loud. I'm feeling this, and I'm feeling this grief, and it's causing me this stress, and I don't know what to do with it, etc. And then as I said all of that out loud, the need for a hug went away. And the same thing works with stress. Actually, yes, you can write down your urgent to-dos and you can do this, that, the other, but I find for me, journaling every day, if I do that, my stress levels stay manageable. Getting out for a walk regularly helps keep things regulated. Completely switching off. So the first week of the summer holidays, I took my laptop with me and I worked, and I came home. It wasn't a holiday. I didn't rest, not properly. Then when I went away again, I didn't even think about work. I didn't check work emails. I was like, I'm off this week. Didn't respond to clients, didn't respond to messages. And even though it was a busier week in terms of activities, I came home much more rested. So there's it's those sort of little things. But I think as well, when you're in a environment with lots of other people, actually, I did a blog post about this, actually, about talking about the cumulative losses, the cumulative stress, the cumulative trauma, particularly as a result of COVID, but actually any stressful situation, and just saying it to the room, this has been really, really hard. And we recognize that in this room, there are people feeling stressed, there's people feeling anxious, there's people feeling afraid, there's people feeling fine. Actually, they haven't been hugely impacted, and so they might come across as a little bit flippant. It's naming all of those different scenarios and emotions just actually almost disperses. I always say what stays in the dark is more controlling than what's in the light. So the more you talk about something, the less it controls you, and the more you can own it and live it. And so talk to someone. I know that when I just sort of stuff is building up in my head, just making a call and offloading, yes. And then often I can, I feel better then, and I can know how to problem solve.
It's true what you're saying. In that scenario, it's the isolation piece as well, where we're being physically isolated from one another, and mentally isolated from one another. And so it's what people would say, well, I don't want to burden you with my problems because you got your own problems. And that in itself creates the barriers. So even to name, so going along the same sort of line as what you say, in terms of your work is to name the emotion, is to put it out there, to name the feeling. It's not necessarily I need to give it to you,
Yeah.
but I need to get it out of myself.
Yeah.
And when we do that in the same space, I don't need somebody else to pick it up and say, oh, poor you. I just need to get rid of it from my own personal space.
Yes.
And we can do that collectively.
Absolutely. And I had an experience recently where I began to feel quite ashamed about something. And shame is a very powerful, very strong, very dark emotion that a lot of people struggle with. And I've been on a huge journey in that area myself to come free of it. But I could feel, I was like, oh, some emotions I look at almost as being like an external voice. Mm-hmm. It's like, shame is really loud in my head right now. And so I was driving and I put in a call on hands-free to a very good friend of mine. I said, shame is really loud in my head right now. I need to say out loud what it is I'm struggling with because I can't hear myself. And so that's all I did. I said, this is what I'm struggling with. This is how I feel about it. This is what I wish I'd done differently. And this friend of mine gently laughed because it really wasn't that big a deal in the grand scheme of things. And then she said, I can see why you feel that way about things. How do you want to move forward? And I knew how I wanted to move forward, but I just needed to bring it into a space where it wasn't in my head.
Yeah. And I think that's why people would say the healing in its broadest sense is not an individual thing. It's a corporate. It's a community. We need each other. So we need each other to do the validation piece, to do the comfort piece, to do this walking alongside. And it doesn't need to be complex. It can be simple.
And I always say to people when they say, yes, but I don't want to burden you.
Yeah.
And my response is, would you feel burdened if I made the call? If it was me making the call? Would you feel burdened if it was your sister or your brother or your friend that was calling you? Well, no, of course not. Okay. So then I don't feel burdened by you making that call. Or your mum won't feel burdened by you making that call. If they do, that's on them.
Yeah. No, that's really, really true. I just wanted to track back to a comment you made earlier in terms of working with kids. I think it was with children. It's like, where are you feeling this in your body?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we in Momentum are working on at present is that idea of the body as the reservoir of the emotions. And sometimes you can tap into it where it is in your body, and it brings release without having to even to name it or even to see where it comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Because I guess sometimes, the further on you go in life, the harder it is to figure out why am I feeling what I'm. So it might be you're thinking, well, I'm feeling ashamed because of X, Y, and Z, which might be today or might be 6 weeks ago. But if you go further back, it's harder to find the roots.
Yeah.
So in the work that you've done, have you seen any of that release without the understanding of where it's come from? Or do you think it's important to know the root?
I think it's you're absolutely right. It's not always possible to know the root. And sometimes we don't know the root because, there's just no way of knowing it. And other times it's because the brain has
shut it off.
Off because it's not safe to process. And so that's where, I talk to clients about trusting the process and trusting themselves and trusting the body, that if they do start to remember, it's because they're ready to go there. Yeah. Even though that can be very, very painful. It's not something that personally I've seen. It's not because it's not possible. It's because our focus is often on finding the cause.
Yeah.
I would say that in myself, I definitely find sometimes I experience things in my body that I know are emotional, but I either don't have the capacity or the understanding as to why I'm being affected in that way. And so taking the time to recognize it's even a thing definitely helps. I'm experiencing tension in my joints or whatever. I am quite a fan of body scans, of actually taking the time to go over my body and, doing the tense and release, starting with the toes all the way up. There's something about that. And I think we tend to forget how important our bodies are in our emotional processes. We tend to accept ailments very easily without stopping to think, why am I experiencing headaches? Why am I experiencing tension in my neck? I think even, just going back to the stress question, just recognize that I carry stress in my neck and shoulders, but I also have suffered, I've got a history of shoulder injuries. So I'll often go, oh, my shoulder's bad, without clocking it stress. So I think just acknowledging even that our bodies are really a really important point of communication in understanding what might be going on more deeply on the inside of us is really powerful.
Yeah. That's so true. So one of the episodes we're doing is around, I don't know if you're a runner or have been or got any sort of idea of the concepts of running. And so I started running about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, if you see me running, you'll be saying, why are you walking so quickly, Josh? But that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. But the thing is, in terms of the stress piece, is the exercise people talk about DOMS, which is delayed onset muscle soreness. Mm-hmm. And they say, right, well, you need a golf ball or a foam roller or something, and if you rub your muscles, you release the tension.
Yeah.
And I think, that's so valid, because the fight flight response, the physiology of it is if you're going to do something, you naturally tense up because you require the energy.
Yes.
And I rephrased it to say DOMS equals delayed onset mental soreness.
Right.
And the two are connected.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways that we've been working on this is with dance.
Okay.
So I don't even like to use the word dance, because it might be movement in the same way that I run. So it's not about being, ballroom dancing or strictly or anything like that. It's about the movement that releases the feelings that are trapped somewhere inside. And I've looked at it and thought, wow, this is a really good way of doing it, of where it is just not necessarily having the time to do it, but it's a fun way of doing it as well.
Right. Actually, that reminds me, I used to, going back to my youngest daughter who got me into all of this, I haven't done it for a while. I guess the whole sort of lockdown has slightly changed our lifestyle a bit. But whenever she was in a bad mood or was really struggling to just talk about her feelings, I used to do that a lot. I'd put on some music and say, and we just dance in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Whilst making dinner. And it would just change. It can change the whole mood. Everything can be released. And so, yes, I actually, in what you're describing, absolutely a decent massage or a facial or a swim or a walk or a dance can actually disperse, I guess, the challenge and the sort of build-up of difficult emotional pain. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. I've even come to the point where, sometimes when stuff happens and I have YouTube friends. My YouTube friends have taught me how to dance. Awesome. And I'd just be doing this. And sometimes I feel like crying and I'm thinking, I don't know why I'm crying, but it's all right. I'll just go with it. And it's fine. And and then I think, oh yes, it was because of X, Y, and Z that happened this weekend or whatever it is. And I can then process it at the same time as the tension going. So that there's a mental bit and there's a physical bit that are running in parallel.
Yes, and I think you're right. By doing something energetic or intentional with your body, it can definitely tune you into what really is going on underneath the emotional experience that you've had that day, for sure.
Yeah. No, it's really been interesting talking with you, Naomi. Just as we wind this up, can you tell us where do people find you? Or how can you be found?
Okay, how can we be found? So we have a website,
Yeah.
which is www.mitos, that's mitos.work, which, by the way, Mitos stands for moving in the opposite spirit. And that is about fear, which seems to be everywhere and affects everything. And so we're all about loving with intention, and we believe that validating emotions and recognizing our emotions and using our emotions effectively is one of the kindest and most loving things we can do for ourselves and for others. So that's sort of part of our values as well. So we are on LinkedIn. You can, Mitos Global Limited is how we're listed on LinkedIn. Both Marie and I, so Naomi Trentham is me. You can look me up on there, and Marie Alcazan. We're also on LinkedIn. You can contact us directly via the website, or email us at hello@mitos.work. We're out there. If you just Google my name, I've been on a fair few podcasts and things. There's lots of links around. So
excellent. No, it's been good talking with you, Naomi.
And it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on.
Oh, you're welcome. We will catch up again soon. Take care for now.
And you, take care.
Bye.